Everywhere we go, we united. Everybody feeling delighted. Each time I talk in my dialect, I did make them feel so excited. Anytime they feeling rejected. Yeah, can't give me man for me, I will like walk. There's no one for so we proud of who we are. There's a duty to deny. There's a task to deny. There's no one for so we proud of who we are. Yeah, can't give me man for me, I will like walk. There's no one for so we proud of who we are. There's a duty to deny. There's a task to deny. There's no one for so we proud of who we are. Let's see, guys, and then let know. Once saw your hip and give us a very written give us now. So everybody feeling me like I'm pulling on the beat like that. Bounce so boy, back in the day, when did you mind the key with the mini mean? Who no be no samba? She's like a Fusala and December. I know ba, Mami Hala Kokona. Like I take a put just one so I may you get like a son. I'm son of you fuck your fa. I love it, now we really give fa. You want to give fa. One so
Hi guys, good evening. Welcome to the Woman Experience with Goretti. Oh wow, the numbers have really picked up. Thank you guys for always being on time. I really have to continue to appreciate you for always being there on time. Please, can you take a minute or two to share this on your page and also share it to your networks? If you are on your WhatsApp, make sure to share to your WhatsApp as well. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Hi, Collie. Hi, Ethel. Hi, Maja. Hi, Maja. Happy birthday. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here. Hi, Wendy. Hi, Momo. Welcome to the Woman Experience with Goretti. Our guest is backstage already. She is ready and ready to delve into this conversation, which holds a really special place in her heart. And I'm really, as usual, so honored that she accepted to come on board with me today so that we can talk about grief. Grief is not something that we talk about a lot. We just deal with it, but I find that you would rarely hear it in normal conversation or in everyday conversation. So I thought, and over the years, I've had a couple of conversations with our guest for tonight around grief, and I saw her, I don't know if I'll call it passion, but I thought it would be really entertaining, educative, informational, and just truly an eye-opener if she and I could have this conversation on a wider platform. So that's why we're here today. So for those of you who are new to the show, welcome. This is the Woman Experience with Goretti. We started with the film Woman, which I produced a few years ago, but we're taking it more and more away from woman and dealing with the woman's experience. A few people asked me this past week what the woman experience is about. And so if you haven't yet understood what it is, all I'm trying to do with you, with the community we're building, and with our wonderful guests, is to create a community where we can just have an honest conversation. It is not an educational platform per se. If you're looking for a professional platform where you're going to be speaking to professionals in various fields, that is not exactly what we're trying to achieve here. We're just trying to create a community where we men can learn from each other's experiences. That's it. There's no two things. It's the woman's experience. I could learn a lot. There's so much I can learn from your experience, and there's so much you can learn from me. So this is what we're trying to do here. Create that platform, judgment-free space where we can just learn from each other. So that's the woman experience. So tell a friend to tell a friend that that's what we do here every Wednesdays at 8 p.m. and Fridays at 8 p.m. as well. For those of you who watched the show we did on incest with Rosalind Fonkwa, who is an actor, producer, and the CEO of the NGO Voice of Hope, which is an NGO that deals with sexual assault victims, tries to rehabilitate them, tries to offer them counseling, and tries to put the rapists behind bars. I did confide in you something personal about someone I knew who had been in that situation, and I didn't do the right thing because I did not tell. So I have been able to have that conversation with her mother. And I just want to say, wow, such a relief. I really want to thank you guys for encouraging me and to tell, because I had that conversation with her mother, and she was so open and she was so forgiving and so understanding that I wish I'd had it earlier when it was all happening. So I want to say thank you so much for giving me the peace that I hadn't gotten all these years. So I appreciate you. And this is why we are here, really, to help each other, to learn from each other's experiences, and hopefully make our lives just that little bit easier. So now on to today. Again, I said we'll talk about grief. We will focus on the definition of grief as it pertains to death of a loved one, because grief has different definitions in different dictionaries. But we will focus on the bit that deals with the loss of a loved one. And when I think about grief, I remember a quote from the actor Keanu Reeves, which I watched on Stephen Colbert, the American talk show host. He asked Keanu Reeves what he thinks happens when we die. And his response was, the people we love will miss us the most. I really, really like that. Every now and then when I think about grief, that's what I think about, because truly, truly, yes, we all believe in God. We all believe in we all have different religions, different spiritual paths. But the truth is, none of us can say for a fact what happens after we die. But we sure know for a fact that when we die, the people who loved us the most will miss us dearly. And so this is off that premise that we're going to be having that conversation. Our conversation is going to be centered around those who are left behind, how they're dealt with, and what they go through, and how just generally they deal with that, which is grief. So my guest for tonight, she's backstage and smiling. In my opinion, she's a sage. When I think of Ngum Ngafor, I think of wisdom. I think of, wow, this is a girl she's not your average girl. She is like, what's that food? Caviar. You either have a taste for it or you don't. And it's not for the simple-minded. And it's such an honor to have you here today, Ngum, because I'm bringing you right now. Hi, Ngum.
Hi, Goretti. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry about my lighting. It's not the best. I've got stained glass overhead lights at home, so it's a little dark. So hopefully we'll have an enlightening conversation. So
you don't have to apologize.
By the way, thank you very much.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Goretti?
It's breaking.
Oh,
I can hear you now.
can hear you very clearly. Okay, let me move closer. As if that's going to change anything. Can you hear me now?
Yes, but if you notice, your voice is coming before your mouth moves.
That's bizarre.
I know it's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think it's back now.
Okay, good. Okay,
Good.
so first of all, thank you for that introduction. I'm feeling vain now. Okay, no one's ever called me a sage. I don't know how my mom is
You're
gonna
my
feel.
sage. That's how I think of you.
As a teenager, my mom would be like, "Are you sure?"
Your mom would then be proud of the woman you grew up into. She really would be.
So yes, thank you very much, Goretti. I'm quite happy to be here. Like you said, we've talked about this a lot, and I feel it's a timely conversation for our community to have. We deal with death enough, you know,
We do.
but sometimes when things happen, they just happen, and people don't really get the chance to talk about it. So I'm very, very pleased that you actually took this idea seriously and you're making a show of it now.
I've always told you that your concept of death and loss and all those things is something that I think so many other people would benefit from hearing about how you think about it. So hey, it's my honor. Please don't thank me. So let's dive straight into it. Ngum. Grief. How personal is it to you?
Grief is very personal to me. Grief is personal to me because I think grief is a human condition. So it's only a matter of time if it's not personal to you. And I think when I was thinking about the conversation we were going to have, and just, recently, my grandmother's anniversary, I realized that grief is something I've known for since I was a child, maybe since I was even like 5 or 6, because my very first memory is going to my cousin's funeral. I mean, I was very little. So I have very vague memories of it, but I knew that something had happened. I was old enough to have a concept of death. So I feel like it's something that has really, when I think about it, been there in my life at various points. Yeah.
I'm sure it's been in all our lives. I think everyone who's watching this has had to deal with grief firsthand at some point. If you haven't, oh my goodness, you're so lucky. I hope that all the things that we're going to share today about grief will help you when that time comes for you. But my first question, before I even talk to you, I'm just going to ask a question to the audience, to our guest, our third guest, which is the audience, is I just want you to think about grief, not just personally, even if you're yet to experience it personally. I want you to think about grief as we have this conversation as an observer of our culture, our society, and how we deal with grief. And I want you to take your experiences or your contributions from there as well as personally. So I want you to be an observer looking into our community, into our culture, and how we deal with grief, so that your contributions will come from that angle. People are already responding that we grieve because we love. You can read the comments, right?
Actually, I can't. Oh, hold on. I was on the live comment feed. I'm there now. Yes. So I can see.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So for those who joined us at the start, welcome to the show. We're talking about grief today. You heard the music that I played. I played Witty Minstrel, who is the current rave now. I'm not from Banso. Shout out to my Banso peeps. But I love that song so much. So for a girl like you from the Northwest, Ngum, how is grieving in your culture? How is grieving in your culture?
Oh gosh, I think if I talk about the northwest of Cameroon, the one thing that the various cultures in the northwest have is this very life affirming thing about us. So grief is a huge thing for us. When somebody dies, it's a huge blow because everything about northwest cultures, as I know, are built around life. So for that life not to be there, it's a huge thing, and it's got to be recognized.
So for that life not to be there. So how is it? Are there any particular rules or cultural norms when it comes to grieving? Let's say, how do widows grieve? If you lose a spouse, if you lose a child, how is it for you guys?
Okay. I think this varies from place to place. Unfortunately, I grew up in Bamenda, so I kind of grew up more in the urban area.
Mm,
So I haven't got as much exposure to my own culture and its views on these things as I would like to. I know some bits, but
mhm,
I actually looked at different other cultures. I think the things that we have in common, if you say lose a child,
mhm.
I think that's considered even more particularly sad, right? Because they
Yeah.
think it's life. So I know that in my village, for example, I'm from Bafokeng, for anyone who doesn't know. Um, so we in Bafokeng, if a child dies, there's no gun salutes. You know how they shoot guns to celebrate. This
Mhm,
doesn't happen because they think it's a tragic thing. A child shouldn't have gone like that.
mhm,
Um, it's definitely more somber.
mhm,
Um, I think I think the more dramatic one that I have seen is when a man dies and he leaves a wife behind, right, or a widow.
mhm,
So there seem to be these very elaborate rituals for widows in the Northwest. Again, in my part of the Northwest, I think perhaps just because of my family, I think it's been Christianized a little bit. So, like when my dad passed away, compared to other traditions I've read about, where the bride, I think like in Bali Kumbat, for example, in the very traditional pre 1977, I would say
mhm,
there was this thing where the widow would literally be withdrawn from the community. She was not supposed to have contact with people. She would sit and sleep on these plantain leaves. She would be wearing this really raggedy clothing. It was, it was harsh. Okay, she would only bath something like once a week. Not even
mhm.
wash her hands. And the thing here is, for whatever reason, a lot of that was couched in suspicion, I would say, because the widow is always there's always this notion that she may have killed her husband,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
women have to take oaths. You know, women will have to take an oath to say that they haven't killed their husband. So
Mhm,
in my village, I haven't really seen that. I mean, my mom didn't have to sit in any secluded area. She kind of sat away from people, but I think that was more for her own sort of mental well-being.
mhm.
But people who came to the house, she would come and greet them and then go back. She didn't have to wear any sort of she was well dressed. She
Oh,
back.
well, your mom is so lucky because I find that, I mean, please tell us if it's in your culture is any different. I'm Banwa 99 plus 99999, and in my culture, well, I can speak for my sister because it's grief is very close to me, and loss because my sister is a widow and my mom is a widow as well. But I know that when my dad passed away, my mom had to mourn him for a year. So there's that thing of a year. I think that thing is most cultures in Cameroon. Anybody
Yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong, where
yeah,
the widow mourns for a year, and then she has to wear a particular set of clothing. So in my mom's case, we chose white. So my mom had to wear white for a year, and then she had to shave her hair and do all these things. I mean, they're really damaging traditions. I think, like you said, Christianity has affected us, so it's not as impactful anymore. Where those kind of things, where the woman doesn't have to take a shower or pass her on to her brother and stuff. But my mother had to do the year, had to shave her hair, and had to wear just one color throughout. I don't know how it is in your culture. Ethel is same for Bamileke people is the same. Yeah. So what is that the same for men? Like if a man's wife dies, does he
I'm
have to
already
do the same things? Are they
I don't
sorry?
I don't think so. I think similar to what you guys have in Bangla, my mom also had a 1 year mourning period.
Mm-hmm,
Um, Again, I think my mom, what she did, she didn't choose black or white. She chose the ashwebi for my dad's funeral. And I noticed that she didn't wear it all the time, like when she went out on certain occasions.
mm-hmm,
So she would wear it often, but it wasn't like she had a business to run. She couldn't be going in with the same dress every day. So again, practicalities of everyday life has meant
mm-hmm,
that a lot of traditions have had to adapt to that. again, Balikumbat being a good example. I researched Balikumbat because online it's very hard to find these things for different Cameroonian traditions, and they have a lot of information and being of Bali heritage on one side of me. I just thought, let me look at that. So yes, and I think other villages in Cameroon have followed suit and just really tried to be practical. But yeah, my mom did have to wear the ashwebi for a year, and then I don't know if you probably have the same in Bangwa. It ends with this ceremony.
Yeah, the cry die.
Yeah, or for move black. So I know
black,
that
move black.
Yeah, men also have the move black thing, but I think that it's really about the strictness of society. So like for a woman, people are really strict. Like this 1 year, don't you, you have to follow this thing. Don't you dare, see another guy or whatever. That's just not, I mean, in a lot of other traditions, is there prohibited. No sex during this period, right?
For 1 year.
Yeah, but for men, even the morning traditions, the morning rituals, I think they tend to be shorter for men. So for men, it can be days. For women, it can run into months, a year. But I think even though I think it's a year too for men in terms of the whole ending of morning ceremony, so I think a bit more lenient towards them.
I wonder why. Can anybody share how it is in your culture, if it's any different from what Ngum and I are talking about right now? Ethel says, not sure about womb people, but Diana says, we don't get the opportunity to grieve because we are told God is in control. We are told to stop crying. Yeah, that the effect of Christianity on our tradition.
She's right. And I think the God is in control thing is just a way to try and explain something that we don't understand, I think death still remains this mystery that like human beings can't understand, and they always try to rationalize somehow. So even in our own traditions, the reason why you point fingers at people, the white person, the brother, the sister, it's people trying to rationalize something that they can't understand. So I think then what Christians do is, let's just put this all in God's hands. We don't understand this, but God knows more than us. So I think it's Diana who said it. She's absolutely right. The whole God is in control thing, as much as people are well-meaning, when it doesn't always give you the room to acknowledge your feelings and really deal with them.
So I want to ask anybody here, anyone who's willing to respond to this. What is the worst thing that someone has ever told you when you lost someone? What's the worst thing? What's that thing that you didn't want to hear? Or what's that thing that people say all the time that you don't want to hear? You don't think eases your pain? Do you have any? Like when maybe your grandma died, what's the worst thing that somebody told you? Well-meaning but wrong timing.
I'm trying to think. Maybe I'm just lucky and I know really good people, but I think it wasn't so much what somebody said. I remember when my father passed away, and it was just a moment where I just had this thing where, one moment where you just lose it. And I started crying, like really hysterically. And then people came and they tried to restrain me, and they were literally trying physically to stop me from crying. And what people didn't understand was that was actually a release moment for me. I needed that. I really, really needed that, because historically I'm quite a stoic person. So for me to go to that other extreme, in myself, I was feeling like I need this. But I think people were thinking, oh my God, what's she going to do next? So I think, for me, it's not really been so much what people said. It's been more people trying to stop me and saying, oh, don't cry. That's not a good thing. Let people let their emotions out.
Holly wants to know, why do men not undergo the same treatment that women go? If there are any men in the audience, please let us know. Why do you think? Is it fair? It definitely is not fair. I mean, it certainly is not fair, but we come from a patriarchy, right, Ngum? And
you've just answered the question. You need to understand that a lot of these things actually come from men. Men are the ones who have ever since the sort of overthrow, if you like, of African matriarchies or more equal societies, because believe it or not, the Africa we see today isn't the way, isn't how Africa has always been. There was a time when we had fairer, more equal societies. So there's always been kind of underlying suspicion of women. I don't understand it. This fear. In fact, I read something here that I think I should share with people. It's written by a Cameroonian guy called Vitalis Pemunta. He's written a lot about this topic, and he was writing here about Bamileke communities, and I think this was Balengo, and he writes something about a quote that somebody gave him for women. So just listen to this. Women have very strong powers. They are both good and bad. They give birth, but they can also take away life very easily. They need to be controlled because they're emotional and can easily be deceived by other men into killing their husbands using their mystical powers or even poison. Our ancestors thought that if they were submitted to rigorous widowhood rites and practices, other women would be deterred from killing or even thinking of killing their husbands so as to become happy widows. So this is the backdrop, right?
That could be it.
All these things. So I think that kind of explains to you why there's that suspicion of women. And because men have the power, of course, they're always going to do things that benefit them. It's as simple as that. It's a power thing.
But then women, on the flip side, women, do you guys realize how much power we have? How much men are threatened by our power? Because that looks to me like a coward. He thinks, oh my, this woman is more powerful than I am. And so I have to find a really cunning way to subdue her. And because we are emotional, they played on the emotional part of us and said, you need to do this when your husband dies to show remorse. I mean, I think our African traditions are even kinder, because when I did some research and I went into India, where back in the days when your husband died, you were cremated with your husband.
India has...
I'm grateful for the times in which I'm born. I'm telling you, Ngum.
How anti-woman they can be. But I think it says it very well here. That the thing with women is this, right? Women are just naturally very complex creatures. And I think because of how complex women are, people can't figure women out. And when people can't figure things out, they get very scared. Because when I think of it, I've always just wondered, like, what is this irrational fear? Because to me, it's an irrational fear. It doesn't make sense that a woman would love a man and want to kill him, or you would want to kill the father of your children. I mean, it says here, happy widows. You have to love. I mean, that's the oxymoron of the year.
I'm telling you. Ethel said that when I asked some of the things, she said, my dad didn't shave his beard for a year. He was in the military, so he had to wear his uniform. Ethel, that's mild now, compared to not bathing for months or wearing the same color or the same outfit for years. So, your father got a pass, in my opinion. She says, Mimi says, sorry, it's covering our faces. In the northwest region of Cameroon, the way of celebrating the life of a dead husband is almost like a punishment to the widow. In some cultures, the widows can't touch people for a while. They can't sit on a chair, but on the floor. The list goes on. Listen, I frown at these cultural practices as they are more of a punishment, which explains, that's it. They are punishment because, like what you've just read, what was his name again? From Patrick?
Yeah, it's called Ngum Vitalis Pemunka. I'm actually going to share you and you can share it to other people. It's a brilliant paper.
Ngum Vitalis. Yeah. The men were literally afraid of the power of a woman. And so they found ways, again, I'll use the word, to subdue us, to reduce us, to make us feel worthless, to reduce our worth in our own eyes. And the irony of this thing, women perpetrate these practices even more than the men.
Yeah, and that is so true. And this is the sort of, how can I put it, the really snaky thing about any form of oppression. It will always co-opt a group of the oppressed to further mission. So again, in many parts of the Northwest, Balikumbat, again, I keep going to Balikumbat. Sorry, Balikumbat people. Now just say people when I pull stuff online. So but it's the widows, and not just Balikumbat, even in a lot of Bamileke places, it's mainly the widows who actually enforce all these things. So taking the woman to the river to bath once a week, feeding her in this calabash that's only washed once a week. She doesn't have to wash hands. Taking her to the river, right, to shave every part of, like, any part of her body that has hair. Women had to go naked at some point just to, for this morning ritual thing, until it got to where I think the influence of missionaries and I think just more progressive chiefs came in. There is a chief from Balikumbat. The guy who was the chief in 1977 I have to look his name up because I really have to big
Why
him up.
why name of let me read some comments though. Angel says it's simply what we have and allow from 1 to 3 women. Yeah, Ethel, I think I get what Angel, I get what you're saying. We allow these practices to still be meted out on us, even though we are also enlightened, and a lot of us are so enlightened. We still allow these practices. So I think I get what you say. Maja says exactly, people fear what they do not understand. Did you find the name? Go.
Yeah, so the name of this phone is Gagwanyin the third.
Mm-hmm.
That man to me is a hero, okay? Because when he came in 1977, and I think there'd been agitation in the village over it. Because don't forget, human oppression is not a natural human condition. So human beings will always push back. So there had been women who had pushed back. The missionaries had come in the 1920s and begun to criticize these things. These are probably even some of the things that made women turn to Christianity. Mm-hmm. So there was already that pushback, and he was dynamic enough to say, okay, this is not working very well. Let's try and modify these things. So he dropped he reduced the time for rituals considerably. He then said, okay, women can. It wasn't like don't go naked anymore or don't cut out the naked part, but at least cover yourself so you're not exposed. And then he had another son who succeeded him, and then he came and he took it even further. It was like, okay, you can cover yourself, you can dress, wear white. So again, it's that thing, and just the practicalities of modern life. People have to go to work, okay? Yeah. People live in the city now, you can't come and control them. So I think just the times and the pushback from people will always make us modify. And again, this is the thing. Tradition is not this thing written on tablets of stone. Okay. These things can change if they are not serving people. So this is what we need to learn.
And I think that's what we're trying to make women aware, that if it's not serving us, we don't have to propagate it. It's not on us. We really need to take an honest look at our traditions nowadays and see what serves us in our current situations in life and this current time in life. We're in the year 2000s and whatever 20. Some of those practices need to be eradicated, whatever the word is.
Oh, I think that the thing is, people, you have to sort of the thing that we need to do enough of, and I don't think we do enough of, is actually even question why these traditions happen. Because when I was looking at this particular thing of you going naked, you having to swear you didn't kill your husband, you're literally punished. And I think the premise of it is that it's a purification thing, right? But then you ask yourself, like, my husband has just died, why am I being purified? So that purification implies that there's something bad about you.
Fear. Fear. And I think
fear, it's not a good thing.
And I think it adds to what all the women are saying in the comments. The women are enablers, like Collie said. The women, Shanti says, the women fear. They fear my country, fashion no follow them. Yeah, it's true. So I think it is that, and I think that we all really women, we need to wake up. And if we can fight for another woman, if that's the kind of tradition, and not so they all fear, juju. But if there is a way we can protect a woman from going through some of these widowhood practices, please, we really need to.
Yeah, but I think
Ngum,
I've just seen something from Tessie Tess, and she says, I might be wrong, but I would like to think that most of these cultural practices have been diluted by modernity, education, and very deserving training women empowerment. Yes and no. I think for those of us who are removed from these situations by social class, by education, by just our location, yes. But there are women in very rural parts of Cameroon for whom these things are still a reality. So there's a weird dual situation going on here. Yeah.
So let's talk about the mental state of these women. If you're a widow, if you know about a widow, do we, when we let these women go through all these practices, when we let widows and widowers go through such practices, do we ever think of the long-term mental health of these women? Do we take it into consideration at all? Because there's very little literature on it, especially on African women. There is so much literature on what happens to the West in widows and widowers in the Western world, but not a lot on African men and women.
No, not a lot, because I tried to look. A lot of the things that are written are kind of written from this very sort of sociological, anthropological slash political activist point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So they will mention, oh yes, this has, you know, this has damaging psychological effects. They don't really delve
Mm-hmm.
into it. But I think based on the things that these women describe, to have to walk around the city naked, your village naked, that's awful. To have a bunch of women, right, taking you to a river and stripping you naked and shaving every bit of hair on your body, including your pubic hair. How intrusive is that? Right? I mean, that's bordering on sexual abuse. So I think that it just these things can have a very damaging effect on people. And like you said, the sense of betrayal of
Yeah.
seeing your own fellow women doing this to you, usually widows themselves. So you're thinking, you've been in my position, you should know better, you know? So I think you can extrapolate from that information and say that, people are not thinking, when the last thing on their mind is the psychological welfare of these women. So these things are very insensitive.
So let's, for those who have, I know there's a few women in the comments who have lost children. How is the grieving process? Ngum, I'm going to ask you later on to talk to us about the different stages of grief. But I want to ask, after you tell us about this the different stages of grief, for you who has lost a parent, who has lost a child, who has lost a spouse, do you find that, would you be able to relate to what Ngum is saying? Ngum, please explain the different stages of grief, and let's see if it's that when you actually do lose a loved one.
Okay. So I think there are various descriptions of the different stages of grief, first of all. So I'm looking here at the five stages by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and a guy called David Kessler.
Mm-hmm.
So the initial one is denial. So that's when you're sort of like, oh my God, this cannot be true. Almost trying to block it out of your mind. You hear things where they call you from Cameroon and say, oh, your dad has passed away. You're like, okay, you get up and go to work. That's classic denial, right? You don't want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the sort of anger stage where you feel like this is an injustice. Why is this happening? And then you have the bargaining stage where you're kind of like, oh my God, what can I do to make this pain go away, basically? And then you have now the depression stage. I think that's when you're beginning to accept it. And you see that this is not going to change, but of course you're kicking against it emotionally. So you fall into this depression, which can be really dark and horrible. And then eventually you get to the stage of acceptance where you say, okay, this is permanent. I need to learn to deal with this, and I need to learn to start, planning a new life, and planning a new life and accepting that this is this is a part of it, but trying to see new hope. So those are basically the five stages of grief. And I have to say they are not linear. Okay.
Mm-mm.
I've said it like this. One day you could be in acceptance and you feel great. You wake up the next morning, you're in denial.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you're just joining us, we're on the Woman Experience with Goretti, and we're talking to Ngum Ngafor, and our topic is a bit heavy. We're talking grief, but I think from our conversation so far, what I'm getting from our guests is that we really need to stop being enablers.
yeah.
Because I can see Marge saying something very, very strong, sounding very passionate here. I remember smoking spiritual banger at my father's death. And waiting for any video to touch my mom. They steered very clear from us. That tells you much that we can actually stop these practices.
We can, and it's like Maja said, again, you have to understand that a lot of us are very insulated by our social class,
Mm-hmm.
our education. It's harder to come and attack a woman like Maja's mother, who is very highly educated, reasonably financially well off, accomplished and assertive, and can speak for herself,
Mm-hmm.
and has this entourage that can help her, and had a grown-up daughter That's very different from a woman in the village who depends a lot on her in-laws, doesn't really have anybody to back her. And again, it was the same thing for us. When my mother passed away, what was very interesting, it
Your
was
dad.
my dad. Oh my God.
Mhm.
When my dad passed away, it was my mom's friends, right?
Uh-huh.
Who were sort of around her, really trying to take care of her, and we trusted them, so we sort of left that part of things to them, and we went doing all these things around. So there was just no way. My mother has grown children. It was
Mhm.
just not. It didn't even occur to me that somebody would try a thing like that. Yeah.
So I'm gonna tell you guys a story. You guys remember this guy DJ Arafat?
Oh
Just
yeah.
yesterday, I saw he passed away last year from a bike accident. He was, I think, he's a Congolese
He's Ivorian, I think.
Ivorian singer who was really popular, and he has his fan base is really crazy because remember they even dug up his corpse. I wasn't really a fan of his when he was alive. So, but yesterday I stumbled across Washington's Facebook post, and she done this post where DJ Arafat, before he passed away, he had a fiance, a girl he was going to marry. I think he'd already done like her introduction, and so he was going to marry her, and he passed away. It's been a few months. It's not been up to a year, and this girl has started. She's moving on, I guess. We don't know what her grieving process is, but she started dressing up again pretty and showing herself and taking pictures and putting out on social media. And yesterday, his fans threatened to rape her. They were threatening to rape her. And if you read the comments, I actually screenshot some of the comments, but I just thought I don't want to put that on there. But they are threatening her. They say she has to go back and mourn. This man wasn't even her husband.
They're not even married.
They were not married yet. But his fans are saying that that they're going to deal with her since she wants to dress up cute for other men to see her. They're going to show her what she deserves because she's disrespecting his legacy.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Look, let's be fair. If it's this girl who had died, would Arafat not have moved on by now? Let's be fair. That maybe he would have mourned her, but there is a chance that he would have moved on and there would have been less noise about that. So to me, it's just baseless. Look, we're first of all in a coronavirus period. People have all sorts of issues and they're just looking for people to project their issues on. But even without this case, Gority, you and I have talked about it before, this is a general social perception. It's almost as if women have no right to move on. But it's nonsense. It could have been the average couple down the street and it would have still been the same thing. And it's very unfair. I think people have different ways of moving on. Just because you see somebody dressed up doesn't mean that she doesn't still feel pain. But she cannot be stuck in one place forever. She can't.
Which brings me to this. What do we expect from young women under 40 who lose their partners? Do we expect them to stay single forever?
I think that
because our fathers, I know that for sure. Our fathers, they are men folk. When your wife passes away, 3 months into it, people are encouraging you to find someone to come and look after you and your children.
Let me tell you a story. I remember hearing this joke in Cameroon. This guy, at his wife's burial, okay, there were girlfriends there already jostling for position to become a wife. So it can be that soon for some people. So there is that expectation for a woman to just sit there, especially if they have children, because their excuse is, oh, another man might mistreat the man's kids and all that stuff. But the thing is, look, especially if a woman is young, if your husband dies when you're 30, 25, now we have very young widows. Is she really supposed to just spend her whole life mourning this man? It doesn't make sense. It's not like she cheated on the guy. It's not like she killed him. So I feel that once a woman has gone through her mourning period and she feels ready to move on, she needs to move on. And I think society needs to understand. You can sit there and have your judgments, but you're not with that woman at home when she's having all these issues. When she's dealing with the trauma of not having anybody to talk to, when she's having to fight off in-laws. And, we're just human. People need company. People need love. What's wrong with going out there? And she's a young woman. Okay, she's got to get it on. Okay. You need to press. When I know if major she don't so.
Exactly. You need to press Ngum. You need to be pressed as well. No, but this brings me to something which is really dear to my heart, because I wonder why we don't let women move on. Let ladies and gentlemen, why don't we encourage, if they are willing, our loved ones who have lost someone to move on with their lives, if somebody is willing to marry? Because in my case, I remember that when my father passed away, it's been over 10 years. My mother was still relatively young. I had a conversation with my mom and I told her, you need to think of remarrying. She was shocked, like, what? Like, it felt taboo to her. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're still very young. You still have like 30 years, God willing, on earth. You're not going to remarry.
Yeah.
Why is that so difficult for our community? Why? Is it still just that culture?
It's that culture, and you have to understand, right? Without meaning to attack our men, because they are my fathers and my brothers and I love them, but the thing with patriarchy is that it takes two things away. It makes men not accountable. And then also, because they are not accountable and things happen the way they like, then they become narcissistic. So we are literally, through patriarchy, breeding a bunch of narcissists. And if you're a narcissist, you want everything to revolve around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the problem. It really speaks to the core of how a lot of our men think. I am literally God. So if I'm not here, nothing happens without me. So if man A is going to think like that, man B is going to think like that, because he's thinking, oh, if I want this woman to move on, guess what? When I die, my wife too will move on. I don't want that. So at the core of it, it sounds childish, it sounds stupid, but that is what it really is, And I think because women are conditioned like this from a very young age to think, oh my God, if you marry, then it means you didn't even love your husband. So a lot of women may even want to move on, but they're afraid of what society will think. And then people be like, yes, we'll not be talking like man.
See, Ethel is saying, I wish my dad remarried. He may have lived longer. Yes, because a lot of our parents our fathers are wholly dependent on our moms.
Yeah.
Emotionally, for the running of the home, they are 100% dependent on the mom. And so when you pull away that cushion.
Yeah.
Sorry?
When you pull away that feminine energy.
Yeah. He's left confused. So why don't we encourage them? Honestly, like, this is you and I agree, though. You and I have had this conversation. You and I agree. What do you think, guys? I think it's time that we have honest conversations with our partners, those of us who are married or in long-term relationships. We really need to have these conversations. Like, if you die, is it okay? I'm gonna remarry. If you want to anyway, you shouldn't be. I think. What do you think? I think it's time we have these open conversations about what happens when one of us passes on.
You know what, Dorothy? You've just touched a point I hadn't even thought of, because I think sometimes for some women, right, it's the fear of what will my husband who has passed away think.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're scared. They feel like they're betraying him.
Yes.
Because I remember one of my mom's very close friends. She's like a mom to me, widowed when I was about 10. And she's a fantastic woman. And she came here. She's like my mother. I tease her a lot. And I got my computer. I was like, today, mommy, I'm going to register you for internet. We'll find a new man. And she was like, don't do it. But then I said to her, look at you. Look at my mom. You guys are sitting there, Like Ethel said, I wouldn't have had a problem if my mother had tried to move on. And I know Ethel's dad. Ethel and I went to Lord's together. So I remember their father very well. He was one of the most devoted fathers that I ever saw. Because I think he was really conscious of the fact that he was doing two people's job. And he was always there. And when he came to pick them up from school, this man was so tender with his children. And I think sometimes when you form that bond with your kids, I don't know if that's particularly his case, but like we were talking about yesterday, I think for some men, and there's a case that I know, because they form this bond with their kids and they feel like the children are so fragile without a mother, they worry about a partner that will come and not love these children the same way. So they just, to avoid all trouble, let me just leave it. Let me not even, try anything with another woman, or at least bring her in as a wife or permanent partner.
Maja is making me laugh in the comments. She says, man, some of us behind you do not want to see. If it happens, set me up.
I'm totally setting you up. Why not?
Mimi says we need to share literature on women's experiences on grieving and all these crazy cultural practices. We really need to, and I think that's why we're having the conversation. Because when we were doing the research in Ngum and I, there was not a lot to find. There's not a lot, but we know that these practices exist, but for some reason we are not documenting them. I only hope that the reason is because we are ashamed, not because we are lazy. Yefon say in it for press, right, Yefon?
What we're doing here, Goretti, may not be literature, but this is that part of the movement of sharing the stories.
Yeah.
Because it's about sharing, whether it's written stories. Again, you're a filmmaker. That's a potential topic for you to make a film on, So there will be many ways. These conversations really need to happen. And like Mimi said, really important that we record them, because at the moment, particularly in Cameroon, it's hard. I have to give it to Bamileke people and Bali people. You guys are killing it when it comes to recording your culture.
Yes, that's very true, because they are any literature you find on Cameroon, it's from them. Macha, she says I have to press till at least 70 and beg. Macha,
Bayangi, of course.
You're a real Bayangi girl, aren't you? Collie says, I think it depends on the woman. If she's independent and can take care of herself, she should decide. Most are afraid of what others will say and being stripped of their inheritance by family. And that's what saddens me, because when a woman loses it, we're focused a lot on the woman, but when the woman loses her husband, a lot of the times she finds herself economically disadvantaged. She finds herself playing two roles. She's now mom and dad. And then on top of that, trying to deal with loss, trying to deal with her own stages of grief, trying to deal with the grief and the loss. She still most times has to fight the in-laws for one reason or the other. But like Collie keeps saying, ladies, we are the only ones who can stop these horrible practices in our society, because we are the chief propagators of that. We really are. I think we need to call ourselves out and be honest to people in our families. From the moment where somebody wants to marry, we have a problem with them marrying that person right on to death. We have a problem. We always end up accusing her, or if she wants to move on, it's a problem. It's like, lady, we really need to start talking to our mothers, or at the very least start talking to our daughters and being different, so that it ends with the generations of our parents.
And we have to just rebel, because
rebel. Yes, we have to rebel.
If you really look at, Cameroon has some ridiculously harsh laws towards women, and even in terms of inheritance, which Collie is very right. Sometimes it's a strategic thing. You're just trying to balance things so your kids can go to school and all that. A lot of our laws in Cameroon now is this hybrid of customary law and the laws that were brought in by France or Britain. So sometimes these laws clash and it can get very confusing. So a lot of the customary laws in the northwest of Cameroon in particular, because of this thing called right price, now consider women as property. So the excuse is this: because a woman is property, she cannot inherit property, right? So if some families are nice, they'll say, okay, here is, like, the mother will manage the property for her children until these people, and God help you, it better be a son, right? That's another different thing. So I feel that, and this is why even the idea of levirate marriages, where a woman will marry her brother-in-law, again, is to be able to have access to that property. He will manage it for you and your children until they grow older. But then for men, of course, it's not, he's the one who owns property. And if you two own joint,
he probably doesn't even own it. It probably belongs to his wife, but because he's the man now.
The house, you and your husband own this house, and then the woman passes away. There is no question, the man owns it. So you see how unequal the thing is, So it starts from, but like a lot of the women have said here, it's really a question of women coming together and saying enough of this, And you have a few organizations. I came across an organization called Widows for Peaceful Democracy. And I think different organizations, different villages are beginning to form different things. I know Babanki people in their sort of cultural group, they have something for widows. Again, man, I'm claiming my Bali ancestry today like mad, okay? Because on it, they have these things that they are, they have these organizations that they have for women. They link them up with NGOs, they link them up with lawyers. And I think as we're talking here about women saying no, it's not even about, everybody needs to see what they can do, right? There are some of us may even be watching here who are lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Pick on yourself. Go to your country meeting and educate women, because a lot of these women don't even know that they can fight.
Mm-hmm.
I know in Cameroon where a woman was able to fight off her in-laws simply because she knew a lawyer, and this lawyer had a child in the same school as her child. And through that, they got to know each other, and this woman took it upon herself to help this woman. So this is how we begin to do things. But there are ways. There are ways. It's difficult, but there are ways.
There are ways. And if you are running an NGO that supports widows, I know my sister runs an NGO of the Dr. Fonia Foundation, which she supports widows like herself. And she is a young widow. She was widowed at 36, and she too has never remarried. It's crazy. I think we fear what will people say way more than we care about our happiness. And I think that on that point of widows, let's really think about it. And if you know a widow around you who is a young lady, who is under the age of 40, can you just, if she really wants to move on, be a friend, support her, so that we end this stigmatization around people losing their husbands and remarrying. Maurice says, your topic of discussion is interesting, but as we all know, it would take a very long time for society to accept that a woman remarries after the death of her husband. But personally, I support the idea for her to move on. Maurice, that's why we're having these conversations. We think that if we start by having these conversations, and then our community is the women and men here are very powerful people in their own right, and we're hoping that they have that sphere of influence where they can exert whatever power they hold. So we are hoping that they can take it, and from here, it begins to permeate into the fabrics of society, and hopefully it can change, and our children's children, or we, because we have to look out for ourselves, will not suffer that.
Absolutely right. And we always talk about how it will be difficult, but that's also part of, we need a mindset change. Traditions can and will change. I'll just give you an example of Balikumbat. Even before the missionaries came, I can assure you, if you look at the history of Africa, there have always been rebels, okay? There must have been women who kicked against this. I mean, I will even give an example of Chimamanda Adichie, who said her grandmother, when her father died, interrupted the men's meeting in Igbo land and said, nobody's going to take my land away from me. Even though Igbo tradition said her in-laws should take it, she must have had equivalents in Cameroon. So when you that the missionaries came, and obviously they were trying to win people over, and they looked at the things about our culture that were not so great, and they said, okay, if you're a Christian, you don't have to sit on the floor and sleep on plantain leaves for a week or however long. Come, you belong to Christ, who will treat you nicely. So of course, if you were a widow in that position, who would you choose, the church or that tradition, right?
Church.
So I feel that once the church began to put pressure on tradition, and people, there was this kickback, because people were like, okay, I'm accountable to Jesus now. Who are you, this chief? And all these various things. And people who probably were not even Christians, they were like, this is rubbish anyway. There came a point where, when this fund was changing things in 1977, he was probably just being pragmatic. You had a whole generation of people who had been educated by colonialists, or who had left Bali and could go out there and see the world, and who just didn't agree. So when you have that force pushing back, you have no choice but to change. So I feel that we now are even more exposed. We really see the disadvantages that we've talked here today. There is probably some Cameroonian student writing some psychology paper that we don't even know about now, about the effects of these things on women. So I think when we take these things to our country meetings, every year in America, we have these big traditional conventions. We should be holding roundtables about these sort of things, because some of us out here are title holders in our villages.
Yes.
We have power, or you have access to the fund, to the MAFOR, or whoever in your village. Talk to these influential people. Use whatever means you can.
Tessie, I like what you wrote. Tessie said, I lost a partner many years ago, and the circumstances leading to and surrounding the partnership almost destroyed me. It wasn't a cotton and honey relationship, and the family thought they were a B-wagon, but they met their match. I grieved in my own way for 5 years after his demise. Although the relationship wasn't milk and honey, I grieved in my own way, and for 5 years as a remembrance on the anniversary of his death. Nobody told me to do that, and no one could have. So to you, grief is very personal, and the way you handle grief is very personal to you, which is something actually that I read, Tessie, that a lot of young women, I read this from the Journal of Gerontology, a lot of women who are widowed at a younger age. For some reason, our conversation is centering around widows now, and we're moving on shortly. A lot of widows who are widowed at under the age of 40, they don't move on that easily. Not because they don't want to move on, but statistics show that a lot of them lose their husbands suddenly and often tragically. And so they need time to process that. And because they are so young and society is weighing on them, and there's all these extra factors, a lot of it financial, which is something that Lamaj said, that we need to empower these women financially, because in our communities, not in bush, but back home, a lot of the women still depend a lot on their husbands to be the main breadwinner of the family. And so because of all these things, it takes them a long time for them to recover and get to that place where they think that, okay, I am whole again and I'm ready to move on with my life. And I want to say, Clarice says, yes, grief is very personal, no, Clarice, that's not what I want to do. You said something which brings me to the next conversation. You said, is it moving on with grief or moving forward with grief? That moving on would sound fine for my ear. Exactly, which brings us, but
which always is too clear. For some people, it's moving on. For some people, it's moving forward. The most important thing is you accepting it and saying, okay, I can go on and do other things in life.
Shanti says, the thing that annoys me is that people can grieve reasons why. People can give reasons why they do what they do. I suspect our forefathers are shocked at what is going on now.
They'll be shocked. They set the tone for it.
Inda says, agreeing with Tessie, moving on or not also comes with the quality of the relationship which preceded the loss. People chose not to speak ill of the dead and brush that driver under the carpet. Inda, I'm one of those women who speaks ill of the dead. If you get, I call it, whether you're dead or not, what I experienced from you is what I will say about you. I never can just forget the evil you did because you passed. No, I don't. I never try and sugarcoat it. I speak ill of the dead. If they were evil, I speak ill of the dead. I am one of those, and I make no apologies for it, because us trying to we turn like devils to saints when they pass.
Yes, and it's not fair. It's not truthful. It's not truthful.
It is not truthful. I can't pretend like that. No.
Yeah.
But then, so we move on to grief, because we really, Ngum and I really wanted to talk about widows, because we find that when it comes to loss, widows bear the brunt of whatever it is. Their grief is compounded by so many other things that, especially societal pressure, that we thought that let's give a voice to the widow and know that we see you, we hear you, and if you're grieving, honey, there are so many people, even if you're a widower, because men, again, a lot of the things a lot of the research from the West, which I don't know, which I think will be similar to Cameroon, is that most men have a higher level of depressive symptoms than women when their wives pass. When they are widowed, most men go through more men go through depression than the women.
I'm not surprised.
I am not. I can't speak too much on that. I only have statistics. But if there's a man in the comments,
man would be good. But I think for men, it's also because, particularly for us, right, where we have these very set gender roles in many families, many men would just be lost in the absence of their wives, and that's why sometimes, I don't know if you noticed this when you were growing up, but a lot of men, when their wives passed away, either their sister or their mother came to help them till they found another wife, or the kids went away to live with grandma or auntie. And that's probably why families will say, oh, come and meet new mommy, you need to marry, because there's that thing where men are not expected to handle these duties. And imagine if you're a man who grew up in a very traditional family, you don't know how to cook, you don't know how to do certain things, and then one day your wife is no longer there, your kids are crying, they're hungry, you can't cook, you can't. It's really devastating. So you may not have to fight people for property and all that, but just those practical things and the fact that you're missing your wife. And also, let's not forget, sometimes men to get accused of killing their wives. Okay, if you were like a man who has money, or if you just got a job promotion or whatever, they may say, "Oh, Nanyongo, now you don't care, woman." So there is that thing too for men. Yeah.
Quasi says, any thoughts on protections of widows in non-traditional families like polygamy and royalty?
I'm not very sure. I think the one thing I know is that in the Northwest, it's not unusual for the new chief to marry his father's wife. And again, this whole levirate marriage, because it's more about protection than with some of them are like your mothers. So they're not really your wife. It's like a sort of almost a way to guarantee that they'll be protected. So apart from the chiefs can go on and have kids with the younger wives if they want, but these marriages are absolutely non-sexual. It's more of a contractual arrangement almost. So apart from that, I don't really know much, but I would like to think royal families are a bit more special, so people don't mess around with them.
If anyone has anything to add regards to Quasi's question, any thoughts on protection of widows in non-traditional families like polygamy and royalties, please do share. Because again, we are on the woman's experience and we learn from each other's shared experiences. So please don't hesitate. Ngum, so I'm going to talk. I want to talk about you personally because we're talking about grief, and I want to talk about. We had a conversation some time ago about the loss of your sister and how you dealt with that. I just want you, if it's not too much, to go back into that and tell us how you dealt with it.
Okay. So my sister passed away when I was 14, so it's 26 years today. And I think for me, initially it was a shock, right? Because it's not the sort of thing that you grow up thinking would happen. You know, you grow up with your siblings, you think you will be together forever, or like that just doesn't cross your mind. So unfortunately, it was a drowning accident. They'd gone to celebrate somebody's birthday and swimming in the sea at Mile 6 Beach, and unfortunately got carried away by a wave. And you know, one thing led to another, and the end was tragic. And so for us, I think I still remember being collected from school, and you know, not even knowing what was going on. Nobody had the courage to tell me. Like, this was just a complete devastation. So by the time I got home, the reason why I knew was because as soon as I got to the junction that leads to our house, there were palm fronts. So I thought, okay, this isn't good. Initially, I feared it was my dad. And then as I walked into the house, I should have, like, our gate was flung wide open. This doesn't happen. And then I saw many people in the house crying, like my mom's friends and one of my sister's friends, who usually very glamorous, right? This girl was sitting on the floor. Her eyes, it hadn't registered. So it wasn't until I got out of the car and I took up my head and then I saw the picture on like the above the arch that leads into our house. And I just remember letting out this very loud scream because it's just not what you expect. So I think as a 14-year-old, you know, like it was just like I remember just crying and saying, okay, what happened? And then they explained it to me. And speaking of denial, the first question was like, where's my mom? Where's my mom? They said she's in her room. I ran to my mom straight away. You know, I was 14, going to a Catholic school, very, very Catholic. The first thing I did was take out my rosary and say, okay, let's pray. I had this was like a really classic denial situation going on. And I think it was just, you know, one of the things that I think in my village they don't prolong a young person's death. So the burial came very quickly. And I just remember sitting in the church in our village and I just said to myself, this is really bad. And if I allow myself to feel this thing, this could finish me. This is a 14-year-old having a conversation with herself.
At 14.
Yeah, and I just thought, okay, I'm just going to somehow not feel this. I literally said that to myself. And so we went out to the funeral. We did everything we were supposed to do. After I was at home for like a week, got up, went back to boarding school. You know, my friends were amazing, really supportive. But, you know, because of that, I just sort of didn't really look at my feelings for a very long time. Just decided, I think I just was not ready. So it wasn't until I was at university. And then one day, all of a sudden, I realized, no, you actually have to have this conversation with yourself. So My actual grieving process, I would say, probably started like maybe about 6 years later. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's how long
Where were you? Were you here already?
I was already here in the UK, and I think it was just a matter of time, because this is the thing with denial. You can run away from it as long as you like, but there will just come a day. And I remember that day very well, because we used to do this thing, or I used to do, where I'll go to church and I would light candles for all my dead relatives. And
Mm-hmm.
one particular day I did it, and then I just sat there praying, and this voice just said, "It's time to deal with this thing now." So at that time, I also feel I was ready, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't try to fight it. I just thought, okay, I don't even know what this is, but I'm going to deal with it. And I think also I had the maturity enough to accept that I didn't understand what I was going through, and I couldn't deal with it by myself. So I actually sought bereavement counseling.
Oh, so you saw a counselor? Okay, I was going to ask that.
Actually,
Mm-hmm.
not immediately. I think I sort of did it on and off. I tried to deal with it by myself, but it came to a point where I thought I'm going to need somebody else's help.
Mm-hmm.
So I got counseling for it.
So for those who can't afford counseling, Clarice, you're in the comments. I'm going to ask you again something personal. Can you share, maybe via the comments, because I don't know if I can bring it up so soon, how you dealt with the loss of a child? I just want to, again, grief is very personal, like everything else in life. We all experience things differently, but I just want to compare it for the sake of, does it truly follow those standard 7 stages that are written in all the books? Like there is 7 stages of grief. Do we all go through them? Or you said they are not linear. I kind of agree, but do we truly all go through them? Or is it just that we cannot identify them? If anybody has had that kind of loss, do you want to share how you dealt with it? And for you, Ngum, did you find out, like, was there any long-term effect on the death of your sister? Like, because for me personally, it took me 10 years to talk about my father without crying. 10. Every time I mentioned his name, I cried.
Oh
Every
yeah,
single time.
yeah. I think for me, the long term effects, it took time for me to notice. But before my sister died, I never used to suffer from dry eyes. Never. When I came back from school after that, I began to have all these eye symptoms that I never had before. Until today, I still suffer from dry eyes. So I think for me, when I looked back, that was the one thing that I feel was a long term effect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I'm trying to think of any other thing, but I the crying for me kind of was on and off. It never
Mm-hmm.
really. But I think for me also, and this is, I didn't say this, it's my cousin who said it to me. She said to me that before my sister died,
Mm-hmm.
I used to have a laugh that I lost.
Oh
And for
dear.
many years, I didn't believe her. But when I actually sat down and thought about it, it was true.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if you went through this, but I had this very bizarre thing where, because it actually really took me 20 years after my sister's death to say, okay, look, there is sort of a life after this. And there was a time when I felt like I was living two parallel lives. Like
Mm-hmm.
one one life just felt like my head was down and just, in this situation, and I'm just feeling like my world has ended. But in reality, I was going to school, I was getting degrees, I was doing all these things. But on another hand, I felt like time froze. So it was a really, really weird thing for me. And I think it took 20 years for me to understand this and then say, oh, okay, I think it's time to kind of try and dig yourself out of this.
Wow. That got me a bit emotional. In my situation, I had a dream and I saw my dad in the dream. And I remember in this dream I had struggled. I saw him in the distance and I was struggling. I was swimming, running, going through muddy puddles, trying to get to my dad. And when I got there and I sat and I looked at him, and in a non-verbal way, he just communicated to me and said, "It's time. You've done enough crying. Stop crying." And that's it. I woke up and I've never had to cry again. Um, uh, Inda says, in response to Kwazi, she says, in a lot of cases, the woman's own family will continue supporting her and her children like they would have been doing even before the man's demise. Okay, so for people from the royal family, which is what Kwazi asked.
Wow.
And then she says again, I can totally relate to deciding not to feel it. After my brother died, I realized people don't return from the dead no matter what. So I decided not to feel all the grief I could have felt at the humongous loss of my dad. Did you find, Ngum, when you lost your sister, did you get support from after your sister passed?
Yeah.
Looking back on it, do you think, were you guys allowed to grieve her, to mourn her openly, or was it a situation where they were asking you to stop crying or to stop mourning really quickly?
I think for me that the thing that was, I think there was a mixture because my school friends were absolutely amazing. I mean, when I think about this now, we were just 14 years old, okay? But my friends were so sensitive. I remember going to school and everybody was like coming, when Ngum Ashia, like people like, and I have two friends, Yvonne Linjo, she's probably, I don't know if she's watching today, Loveline Awa, they were amazing. I got back from school and they literally caught up with my notes. They copied all my notes for me. I mean, Yvonne went away and did extra explanations because we had a test coming up and she was like, read from here to here. So my friends, I think, I don't know if because we were peers and children are just innocent.
And innocent, yes.
Really great. And I had a teacher, our English teacher, Sister Monica. Funnily enough, like Sister Monica was one of those teachers I could have sworn hated me. She used to always kick me out of the class. But suddenly she was super nice to me. My school principal could have been nicer. You're not gonna believe this, but I got told off for coming back to school a week after my sister's death. She expected me back the next day or something. I don't know how she thought that was going
Are
to
you
happen.
serious? To a 14-year-old child? But that's the thing, because if anyone has experienced this, Ngum, do you find that after your loss, were people pushing you to get over it too soon, or was the community supportive in how long it took you to grieve? Inda, you said you lost your brother. Can you relate to that? When you lost your brother, did you stay in Cameroon or were you already in the UK? And how was the Cameroonian community that knew about it? How did they approach it? Also, did you find, Inda, this is still for you, did you find that maybe your white colleagues or non-Cameroonian colleagues who knew about it, were they supportive? How was the support? Was it different from what the Cameroonian community gave you? If you can please share that with us.
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, because I've seen different scenarios in Cameroon. I've seen the scenario where a man's wife died, and in hindsight, I look at it as bullying. His friends were, after about 6 months, like, you never find a woman. What's happening? Why are you still single? Like, you need to find a woman. And I'm thinking, but he did remarry, but he did remarry after like a year, which he probably started seeing. But I often think about him because there's a sadness in his eyes till now. I often wonder, did they ever give this man a chance to grieve?
No, that pressure.
Yeah, there's that pressure. I've seen that quite a few times, to be honest. Even with women whom, especially when you lose your dad, are you the first person to lose your dad? You hear things that are like, get over it, he's gone, get over it.
Yeah, people say that. I mean, they didn't say it to me personally, but I've seen it done to other people. I think we were very lucky in terms of, the kind of friends that I had. I don't know what my siblings would say, but my friends at school were just, I mean, even people at school who didn't speak to me were suddenly nice to me. And also my parents' friends were amazing. Like, because then I was at school and they were worried that I might not pass my exams. So everybody was super sensitive. My mom's friends would send me granite. I was just like, wow, and then I had GCE the year after. So I think everybody was like, oh, let's tiptoe around this child, otherwise she could fail her exams. So I think even my parents, I have to give them so much credit. They, even in their own grief, they were still trying. I mean, I remember like in Form 5, my parents used to turn up at school all the time. And I think my friends, it got to this point where all my friends knew my parents always came. So on one hand, it seemed like I was this being treated with kid gloves almost, but my parents knew why they were turning up at school every week. It was just that thing because they really felt like this child has something she's going through. And it's only now that I look at it with adult eyes and I see what my parents were trying to do. So within our family, our immediate family friend circle, like I had family friends who used to come home and pray with my mom all the time. So they were not telling her not to stop. That was their own way of helping her. And it wasn't even to say, oh, Jesus knows everything. No, it was just saying, let's help you. So my parents may have seen it differently, but for us, from my point of view, I find that people who came by us were very helpful.
I think your story is one of the lucky stories. Bernie says, I am currently dealing with the loss of my cousin who died on Mother's Day, and all I still feel is guilt. What do you say to Bernice now?
I think it would depend on why you feel guilty. And I think guilt is a natural emotion to feel, especially if you feel that you have unresolved issues.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, those of us who have a faith of any sort, I personally believe that people live after they die. Because sometimes I think, why would you come here for all this? You know, it will be so pointless.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like sometimes if you believe that you need forgiveness from that person, you can have those conversations. You know, I still have conversations with my dead relatives, my dad, my
Oh,
sister,
yeah, like me, all the time.
my dad, all the
I
time.
do.
And you know, there are things when your relatives died and things that you wish you, the conversations that you wish you'd had.
Yeah.
And have those conversations. You may want to have it while you're praying. You may want to have it just even sitting. You know, you don't even have to be praying. You may even
Oh, this is why she feels guilt. It hurts because I keep asking myself why I didn't reach out more or even care more.
yeah, exactly. And
In
it's
this, in Go
talk
on. Go.
talk to them, and maybe you had your reasons. Maybe you know none of us knows the future, right?
Mhm.
If we all knew that your cousin would die the next day, all of us would be nicer. But you also need to give yourself credit for being human, and you can't know everything. So if you feel like you need to apologize, apologize. It could
Mhm.
be you writing, literally writing them a letter. Of course it won't get posted, but I feel like just let out those feelings and also understand that none of us knows the future.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many things I wish I told my dad, so
Yeah.
many things I wish I'd, and I felt really bad when my dad died because I thought, oh, I didn't realize X, Y, and Z. But
Yeah.
I had to say to myself, you know what, I'm also only human.
Yeah, I want to. Inda responded. She said she was in the UK. He was so young. Oh my goodness, he was young, 36, and it was so sudden. So most people were shocked, still are. But when it's first degree, only you can really feel it and live with its implications. I hear you. I really do. I think she's responding to Quasi here again when she says her aunt was in a polygamous marriage, and it felt as though her husband's only role was to make cousins for us. The rest was down to my dad. Okay, I'll take this because it covers her face. But I asked Clarice Asimbeng a question, and she said, I went through those stages. I still do, though. Dabda. What's
That's it. Denial,
dabda?
acceptance, bargain,
Oh, she
depression,
went through the stages of grief.
and
There
acceptance.
are those emotions you go through when faced with any tragedy. I was hard hit because I had not grieved my son who is autistic. So the emotions were quite overwhelming. When I realized I was grieving, I decided to give myself time to understand what I was going through. I sought help, counseling, even now, and help from my GP. But at some point, which is acceptance, I spoke to God. I also lost faith in Him and asked Him what. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, how do we like this up?
No,
this,
I think the
this,
good thing she said about the non-linear. You know what's so funny when I looked at this whole that thing? I think I was one of those really non-linear people because I did the sort of denial, acceptance, bargaining. Some of these things actually have an anger part of it. I did
Mhm.
all of acceptance, and then I came back to anger. So like I'd done all this thing, and then I suddenly realized I'm actually mad. You know, I literally felt like I'd been robbed of my sister. It
Mhm.
was a great injustice. And I remember like shouting out to God, and I said, you have done a very unjust thing. I feel robbed. Those were my words. So I feel that the loss of faith is not unusual, you know, because if you believe that there's a God who loves you and always takes care of you, then you think, you love me and then you take away my child, you
I
know,
think,
how is
yeah.
that? So yeah, the loss of faith is a normal thing.
Mhm.
And some people it can go on for years and then something happens and
Yeah.
then they, you know, they reach they understand their faith again in a new way. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, wow. So we're talking grief.
Yeah.
Right now, the Northwest and Southwest, we are fighting for Amazonia. And death has become so normalized that I fear, which is the word you were laughing at. I
Yeah.
said, what was it I said? I said, I fear that there is some kind of herd insensitivity to death.
Yeah, yeah. We become desensitized. I
So
think
desensitization to death. So Ngum, as a community, and all of us as a community, how are we going to handle this? Because once there is desensitization to death, that brings about, to me, violence.
yeah.
Because then there's loss of respect for life.
Yeah.
How are we equipping our community? I wonder if anybody knows, for what is to come in a few years, the effects of this.
I don't even think we're thinking that far, if I'm honest. And I think people are so desensitized that when you even try to say something like, no, 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 more get to Amazonia first. But yeah, because the thing is, if you even look at all these rituals that we build around death, I know we've talked about the ones that are not so great,
Mhm.
particularly with those, but there's a big spectrum. And if you look at most life African cultures, Bantu cultures, are extremely life affirming. That's why we celebrate life. We do all these things. Even in grief, we celebrate life. So I feel like we put death like this is this thing, right? This
Mhm.
huge transition. And in respecting death, like you say, you must respect life. So we're in
Mhm.
this place now where WhatsApp pictures are just going all around the place. You see
Mhm.
people's dead bodies. There's just no reverence for them.
No,
And so
none whatsoever.
made us very, very violent people. And I think it would take time for us to calm down from all of that. Because I remember having this conversation with Komi Musa, whom you may know, a journalist in Cameroon. And we were really thinking about this. And she was saying to me that at the moment, I think the Baptist mission in Cameroon is trying to help people with counseling, but
Mhm.
there's only so much people can do. So I think for the people who are sort of, the leaders of Amazonia, so to speak, if we ever get this nation, I really think mental health has to be at the core of the national policy. I don't feel that it's getting that attention now because everybody's so focused on the revolution. But if we're not careful, if we ever get this nation, we will inherit a nation of just emotionally very disabled people. And
Yeah,
how will that help us function?
no, definitely. Definitely. Which brings me to um, each and every one of us in the world now during this pandemic is grieving. Yeah, we had that conversation about what this COVID-19 is doing to us.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I was just like,
Nine.
man, the desensitization of death is just, I think about those who live in America, and I think of all these people that are killed every day by cops, and then they and
Exactly.
like we literally watch them die. And I wonder if the post-traumatic stress disorder this would have on just the Americans, let alone us secondary who are watching all these videos. It really worries me.
I don't know about you, but when I went to the States, I tell you, this thing affects you. I remember going out one day in America by myself and I got an Uber back to my brother's house. And when I got back to the house, because all the houses on the street are so similar, it
Mhm.
was late at night. I couldn't see the number of the house. And I remember like really just kind of stealthily moving towards my brother's door. And I thought, because if I knock on the wrong door here, this could be the end of me. I mean, okay, I would never think like that.
Yeah.
But honestly, I had to go and peep through the window and say, okay, I'm at the right house. But in the UK, this would just never happen. I wouldn't think, hi, as if you send dog for your back, but what else, right? So I think it affects even those of us who are not American. I
Yeah.
know that I minded the way I moved when I was in America, definitely.
I know. I'm never comfortable when I'm in America. So I just get scared I could be shot at any time just for being black.
It's
Let's
happened.
talk about cry dies and
Yeah,
funerals. Why
yeah,
do you think we because our funerals are getting more and more lavish as
yeah.
the years go by? Why do
Yeah.
you think that is?
Um, I think it's just the way the world is, the vanity of human beings, right? Because it's really weird because I think about it and I think, I don't know if it's because I was a child and I wasn't noticing things, but I feel like the more economically depressed Cameroon gets, the more lavish our ceremonies get. How ironic, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's compensation, compensation for my life is boring. Let me do something crazy and amazing. And I feel like a lot of the lavish ceremonies these things kind of started with very good intentions. Let me do a big thing to celebrate my mother or my father, celebrate their life, right?
Mhm.
But I think once people started attaching social class to it,
Mhm.
um, now you want to do your cry die so that it will be more than the other cry die. Like somebody did their mother's cry die, was the talk of the town. People came from Yaoundé, Douala. I mean, when you hear people talking about this, you laugh. They measure it by the cars that are parked there, how many Pajero they did for that die, what drinks were they
How much
serving.
food?
People.
How many bush fallers?
Some kind of be doing they serve only wine, no BSF day. So it becomes this thing. How many ashwebi? I
Mhm.
remember hearing a story once, like there were levels of ashwebi in this particular memorial service, right? You had different costs of ashwebi. So
Mhm.
people like ordinary ashwebi where people could afford, they get high class one, so it's just people being vain, people using that as a stepping stone for affirming or declaring to the world that they are whoever, right?
Yeah, that's
Just like
exactly what I
wedding
think.
can be a way to show off,
Yeah.
pride can be a way to show off. And it's sad because in a way, it can take away then the emphasis of what a pride is supposed to be. I've been very fortunate
Which
to
is for those who
yeah,
are non-Cameroonians.
yeah. So a cry really is like the closest thing I can put it to equivalent in English is memorial service, but really a cry is a celebration of life.
Mhm.
Because when people die at home, we have the funeral part where we cry and we do all these things. We do
Mhm.
the burial, and
Mhm.
then now the way they're doing it in Cameroon now, the cry kicks off straight after the funeral. Back
Mhm.
in the day, it used to be you could leave it for 2, 3 years, gather money and all that stuff, and
Mhm.
then do a massive thing in the village. So,
Mhm.
like this huge celebration, you will have different traditional dances, which mean different things. You will have like juju or masquerades. Masquerades traditionally represent the spirits of our ancestors.
Yeah.
So you have like in my village, you have different types of dances. You will have like the age group dance because historically people were divided into different age groups. So you had
Mhm.
like passage. So you have like your age mates do a dance. You have different family dances. You have different types of juju dances. You have a particular juju in my village that closes everything. So if you do
Mhm.
cry and this juju doesn't dance, you have to come back after however many years and do the proper conclusion. So that was the whole idea of coming, getting people to share a meal. In my village,
Mhm.
again, you have this particular type of bean meal. You call it marusam, and you open a cry die with that. If you don't serve that meal, you haven't done your thing. Okay.
I agree. Sorry, I agree with what Judith says. She says, in my opinion, it's more about social affluence and class than anything else. With the emergence of the middle class and the gap between the haves and have-nots widening, people in a higher social class are more focused on elevating themselves in the society. That's exactly what I think. Why I think the guys are getting more and more lavish.
Vanity. I mean, cry dies are going on for 4 days, whatever, and people are spending. And the sad
People
thing
are
is,
spending. Diana says in Ghana, people go for loans for funerals.
I'm
It's
not
something
just
else.
Cameroon, because now you join the cry die to the funeral because
Mhm.
people want to consolidate and save money. But it's still people get into debt, and that's the sad thing because imagine if you've just lost your husband or your wife, right? You've done the funeral, you do the cry die immediately, you
Mhm.
still have that loss that you're dealing with, and then
Yes.
you got into debt. When
You
everybody
know,
has drunk their champagne and everything and gone away, you are left now with that debt. What
yeah.
becomes of yeah?
People. I know that we want to give our loved ones a befitting burial, but we need to be
Reasonable.
realistic because you can't be you're basically living well to each their own. But to me, I don't see the need for such lavish cry dies. I really don't. But that's me personally. Some people see the need of it because maybe that's how they are in their everyday life. They are grandiose. They do everything grand. But taking a loan for a funeral, I believe in celebrating the living. What do you
Exactly.
believe in?
Exactly. There's a joke in Cameroon that when somebody is sick, no one has money. But the minute they
Die,
die, all they come out, and
die.
it's sad, but it's the reality. So
Yeah,
I would rather celebrate somebody and give you that money while you're living
yeah,
than for me, I just think, look, the day I die, just take me to my village, do all the necessary traditional rites, bury me, give everybody the Marisambe, eat, go. I don't want anything lavish and crazy. There is no need for that. If you really want to go all out, contribute the money and pay to some cause that I care about, like education or something about women.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
your
I'm
family.
standing now. This is my will that I've put on here.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, when you do big credit or hungry, you do people that will catch it, I will come after you.
Ngum, thank you so much. Well, I really appreciate you honestly for
Amazing.
accepting to have this really heavy conversation with us, because grief is very emotional and it's very personal. And like Mimi kept saying, just go with the flow of the audience. That we spent a lot of time, again, if you're just joining us a bit late, we spent a lot of time talking about widowhood in Cameroon because of the unfair practices that the widows are dealt with. And they don't even get a chance to mourn. Even with that, they are mourning and facing all these societal pressures. And we thought to spend a lot of time talking about that again and just creating awareness about that, because like we all agreed, it starts from the woman, and it's the women who continue um, to
Yep.
enable this. We are enablers. So if we can help a widow living this community today, if you see this injustice meted out on the widow, please do find a way to, if you can, intervene and stop it, so that ends with with our mothers' generations and not ours. Go, many last words for your audience, please.
I'm just so grateful that you all came here to talk with us. The interaction was amazing. I'm really pleased. I am so pleased that people were able to share their stories. And I just hope that it continues. We really need to look at ways of helping each other. We need to learn to release our emotions. If there's the one thing that I learned from grief, is that don't bury your emotions. Please don't do what I did and suppress your emotions for 6 years. It will come back. It took me 20 years to undo the work or to undo the damage that I did to myself for 6 years. So yeah, please don't
And
speak up.
for Bernice, who is currently mourning her cousin, we're with you, my darling. Accept our heartfelt condolences, and I hope that you find a way to assuage the guilt, because, like Ngum said, it is just part of the healing process, isn't it? Or
Yeah.
grieving process. Yes. So thank you so much, Ngum, and thank you for all of you who stayed to the end. It's been a long conversation. We didn't think we thought it would probably just be an hour because nobody wants to talk about this, but we're still talking about it, and the comments are still coming in, and we appreciate you so much. Ngum, I'm going to take you backstage while I say goodbye.
Bye everyone.
So just thank you guys so much. Again, we've had I hope an enriching conversation on grief. We are a platform that comes to learn from each other's shared experiences. We most of us know what's been written in the books. Most of us know what the professionals are talking about. But sometimes you just want to come together and just have a conversation and air and share your experiences and air your grievances and share your fears with a group of people that you may know or may never meet, and hopefully take something from it and learn from it. And for that, I appreciate you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you on Friday. And I hope to see you subsequently. And if you are watching us today and there's something that you're passionate about, that you want to talk about, that you think that we all can learn, just slide in my DM, send me a message, and let's plan a show, because this is the woman experience. It's with Goretti, not only Goretti. So I'm only just here to facilitate these conversations, and I would love to invite anyone who has something that they want to talk about or share with the audience. Come on the show and let's talk about it. So thank you guys so much. I hope I can see you on Friday. I hope to see you on Friday, 8 p.m. where we'll be talking all things around the woman's experience. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you and have a good night.